Ahoy, you salty sailors. Time to raise anchor and set sail for your best scrawny life. Arrgh. Now, before we talk about drones, we need to talk about trout. And before we talk about trout, we need to talk about geology. In the northeast corner of Iowa, and in the adjoining corners of Minnesota and Wisconsin, an area called the driftless area has the limestone closer to the surface, and rainwater percolating through that limestone creates springs, which leads to spring creeks that trout inhabit. Now, it's been a very dry year. That doesn't look like 2,000 gallons a minute to me, maybe not even half that. And you can see here, due to the plants grown right up to the edge, this is the Maquoketa River. Plants grown right up to the edge of the riverbank.
But it's a bunch of little rainbows.
Indicate that it's been very dry for several years.
Did you see there, buddy? What do you think of that little guy? Pretty colorful.
Here we see the invasive Japanese knotweed, and there was also quite a bit of the great Indian plantain, that arnoglossom, in there as well.
Well, we did get a creek chub here.
I don't think any trout would have survived the hot stretches that we had this summer. So apparently the DNR did begin stocking again after the weather cooled off a bit. And here you can see again, the water has been so low for so many years, the plants have grown right to the edge.
Well, we got another creek chub there.
Frankly, with the river in the condition it was, I was happy to see any sign of life at all.
At least we're getting the bigger creek chubs.
There were very few catastomids too. I didn't see any white suckers, which seemed to be kind of the first thing to go. And of course, sucker eggs are a food source for these fish during part of the year.
We'll try a different fly. See if we can get a trout interested here. Trout. There's a trout. Whoa. There we go.
Well, it was about this time that I gave up on the fishing and decided to see what I could do with the drone. Now, I'm using the DJI Mini 2. The Mini 3 has more sensors, and it has an object avoidance built into the software, and also object tracking. The Mini 2 does not have either of those.
Well, we got a striped shiner.
Yeah, it's pretty much time to move on to something else. And here's that wild cucumber, Kinocystis lobata. A lot of interesting plants in there. There was quite a bit of Xanthoxylum americanum too, the prickly ash. So anyway, I just decided to fly the drone up into a cave. Now, I don't recall, I skimmed through the directions the drone flying instructions. Briefly, as any good American man would do. And needless to say, this type of flying in this sort of environment is not recommended by the manufacturer. So originally, I had planned to walk alongside the drone along the stream bank, but then I started feeling kind of lazy and just decided to stay seated on my little sandbar there. There was a rising fish, and I never did get close enough to figure out what kind of, if that was a gilled mushroom up in those trees or not. I was getting a warning. I was getting a wind speed warning. But yeah, we took off here and was flying along. You can see this branch approaching here's dropped most of its leaves, so it's kind of hard to see some of the finer twigs. Now, I don't remember much about the instructions that I briefly skimmed through, but I'm pretty sure that DJI was clear in stating that the Mini 2 is not a waterproof drone. If you remove the battery, you can see the circuit boards and so forth, right in there exposed to the air. And they don't appear to be sprayed with a coating or anything of that nature. So as I decided to return to the sandbar rather than walk alongside the drone, I did get in a little bit of trouble with some of those hard to see branches. Probably should have gone right there, but I went a little too low, and the next thing you know, in the drink it went, and it was underwater for several minutes. I wasn't able to just sprint right over there, so it stayed underwater for a little while. But when I fished it out, I removed the battery, went home after that, set it on my desk for 2 weeks, and 2 weeks later I was in the scenic city of Iowa Falls, popped the battery in, and to my surprise the drone took off and flew and turned on the camera, and this is what we had. Shooting perfectly good film of the good old Iowa River running through Iowa Falls. Peak fall color, can't beat that. The Empress was still on the water, so prime time. And with the drone working, we'd at least, if the fishing wasn't good, we would at least get some good fall color shots. So I was surprised as anyone else, but yeah, apparently, apparently you can dunk a DJI Mini 2 for a couple minutes and still fly, as long as you give it a couple weeks to dry out with no battery. So anyway, I started flying from Weaver's Cove and going upstream to that bluff you can see in the distance where we'll do a little bit of fishing. With the water level this low, and you can see it's just dreadfully low, probably the bigger pike and smallmouth moved way down into the impoundment, clear back in the summer. Unlikely that I was going to catch anything of record-breaking proportion in the upper part of the pool there, but I just didn't feel like paddling all the way down into the lower parts of the impoundment. So, to make a long story short, there were quite a few smaller pike around that size in that bend, and then up above there, it just got super shallow. I really doubt if there's anything at all up above there. But right in that bend, nice trees, and I was getting some fish, can't complain. just gotta be thankful for what you're given, and they can't all be like that bronze beefcake video.
Alright, we're right at the entrance to Ashton Wildwood Park. During the wet years in 2018 and 2019, there was quite a bit of Baroque blight, a lot of fungal infections, fungal problems in the oak trees, and there was a lot of armillaria. There you can see some dead ones over there. This one appears to have been struck by lightning, perhaps. We're getting that dieback in the crown of the tree. It does look like we do have some armillaria.
You'll recall from a previous video that armillaria causes a white rot in the heartwood at the base of a tree, which will result eventually in that tree blowing over.
I'm going to go ahead and say, see this bulb? See the bulb at the base of the stem here? I'm going to go ahead and say that is Armillaria gallica. They're having a Halloween event here later on, because while ghosts and stuff are scary enough, there's nothing scarier than amateur mycology. All these dead trees have opened up the canopy enough that the multiflora rose and everything has just really gone to town on the forest floor. And it's gotten a lot more difficult to move around in here. That's Armillaria rhizomorphs right there. All right, we made it down into the valley, and we've got, looks like, a little maitake starting up here. And over here, we've got some more Armillaria. That's there's that webby veil. A little clearer look at that. That's Armillaria gallica. That in there as well. But we got the little maitake. That's at least they got enough rain to spark up a little bit of growth here. This is autumn olive. You can see it has that kind of pale look on the underside of the leaves. Has those red berries.
The autumn olive leaves are alternately arranged.
To be confused, of course, with invasive Amur honeysuckle, which is this right here. See, it doesn't quite have that pale look on the underside of the leaves.
The Amur honeysuckle berries are toxic, and the leaves are oppositely arranged.
These autumn olives are edible. That berry is edible. They're kind of good.
It's easy to confuse those two plants, so just be real sure you know what you're doing before you harvest any of those autumn olives. They are astringent when they're unripe and kind of taste like tomatoes once they ripen.